Hi, everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan of the Leather Elves. I want to welcome anybody who's new to the Flock Talk. We just like to have conversations about all things avian. Just a couple of the usual reminders, housekeeping things. You can like the Leather Elves on Facebook to get notifications. You can check our Facebook page to catch surprise sales, pop up events, things like that. Please follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also like and follow the Rockstar Rescue Tour. We've got. We want to thank our sponsors there, and we'll do a list at the end. We are having a double box sale from now until midnight on St. Patrick's Day, the 17th of March, and on top of this is the luck of the Irish. On top of the doubled boxes for the tour rescues, the donor will receive a $25 gift card, which is good for future Leather Elves purchases. All you have to do is purchase during that time frame. And then we also like to do positive reinforcement here at the Leather Elves. So starting now through the 17th, so through St. Patrick's Day again, if you use the code BNB, you will get 25% off a regular order, not a box order, but a regular order. So BNB, like birds and beaks. So yeah, that's 25% off, and that's on any order placed during that time period. Just use that code. It will not work on boxes. Okay, so disease transmission is a really important topic. There's a lot going on out there in the avian world right now. We're seeing things pop up that we haven't seen. We're seeing things pop up that we wish we'd never see again. But we're going to look at it over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to have some different guests on that we can, talk about that topic. So there's so much importance to information sharing. I know that finding a disease in your flock can be terrifying. It's a really scary moment, but hopefully we can get you some credible resources so that you can manage that effectively. So that leads me to tonight's guest. It is my pleasure to introduce you guys to Shannon Kramer. Hey, Shannon, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good. It's been a rough week, I'll tell you. It's this week, last week, I don't know. There's a lot going on out there. Um, and you have
Yes.
so Kathleen says she can't get enough info. That's awesome. Hopefully we can help answer some questions. So, all right, where or actually when and how did birds become your passion? Because from all your wonderful live streams, it's obvious that it's your passion.
Thank you. I've had birds my entire life. I My entire life I've had birds. But when I got into rescue, uh, people just find you when you have birds for some reason. They just find you, and so people just kept coming to me with help, for help, and that's how it was kind of born.
Okay. And so, what's your first bird memory?
Oh gosh. My first bird memory was of Rio, our uh, military macaw, and he was obsessed with the F word, and it was getting us into some trouble with the neighbors. So that's the first memory, and that's probably why I have the shining, amazing vocabulary that I do as compliments of a macaw.
It's interesting. That's a big one. A lot of people will, call and say, "Okay, I've got this bird that's using curse words, and I don't know how to change that." And things like duck sometimes work. You can train other things that sound similar, but it is a common issue. And I don't know if you heard about there were birds. I think it was at the London Zoo that were cursing quite a bit. And somebody suggested on Facebook that they should open a beer garden and just have them in there. And I think I don't know,
That's pretty reasonable.
use what you got. I'm just saying. So, um, so all right, you are. Well, Birds and Beaks is one of the rescues on the Rockstar tour this year.
We're so
Tell us
excited.
about I I'm psyched. I can't wait. I've been to Michigan like once.
Oh,
But I didn't get to see a whole lot of it. So hopefully we'll Carrie Ellen and I will get to see more. But tell us about the rescue.
well, so the rescue was in my house for 6, 7 years ish. I asked my husband what he wanted for our 20th wedding anniversary. He said, and I quote, for you to get this blank rescue out of our blank house. So at that point, I bought a facility here in Battle Creek. It's on about 5 acres. We have two buildings here. I bought this specific building because of its ability to quarantine properly. So actually, in this picture that you see right here, in that top corner, that's the heating for the front room. So each room is heated and cooled independently and has its own entrances. And so the front room has that, the middle room has that, the third room has that. All three rooms are all cinder block all the way to the ceiling. So I can actually uh, keep airspace if I need to. I could shut it actually all the way down to the room if I needed to. So that's why I
Nice.
chose this building in particular.
So did you have what did you have to do to this building to get it ready for your rescue?
So this building belonged to it was a plumbing place before I had it. It did not look like the pictures you just saw. It was rough. It only had a 300-gallon septic in it, which is not going to be acceptable for a 200 plus bird facility. It We did some cosmetic stuff like the floors. We put a 2,700-gallon septic and a new drain field in, and then we moved all of the plumbing from one side of the building to the other. The plumbing's not completely finished. We put in a new handicap accessible bathroom. I put in a power washing station, which has been a thing of my dreams for my whole entire life as a human being. So it's an 8 by 8 room that has a big drain in it, and then I can use a power washer in it. So we have that.
And
And
the
then we're
drain, I gotta
actively
ask
working on it.
you, I have to ask,
So yeah,
the drain actually works?
yeah,
Like it's
it
in the
does.
right place? See,
It's in the right
this is
place.
like
I designed
over
it.
well, that's exactly why. I mean, it's over the years working with zoos and different facilities. Yeah, Zeb says just a coat of paint, not a big deal. But drains are never in the right place. I don't know what it is about architects or people that design animal care facilities. They put the
Yeah,
drains in the wrong place. So yeah, you had
because
to design it
they're
yourself.
not
Okay.
taking care of them. You have to do it yourself.
Yeah, it's true.
Yep.
It's true. So so how long has it been? How many years have you had the rescue?
The rescue in total, 9 years, I think, this year. And then
Okay.
this facility, we've been here since 22.
Nice, very nice. And so what's what's the adoption protocol? So I'm in Battle Creek or I live, somewhere nearby. How do I, get to adopt one of Birds and Beaks birds?
Sure. So we have a 350-mile adoption radius, although we will look at exceptional homes with zero red flags outside of that radius for the right places, and we know them when we see them.
Mhm.
So you go to our website, put in an application, and then and it tells you all about the process there. And then from there, you send us a message on our Facebook page, and our team will then do an interview with you. And what we're really doing is with the interview, we're getting an idea of what you know, what you don't, where we can kind of fill in the information. And then we're also matchmaking. We're trying to match personality with personality so that, grandma who is really just wanting to watch Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy every night at 8 isn't getting, 4-year-old macaw who wants to party all day and every night like a rock star. So we want to make sure that we're, getting the right birds with the right people, and we know our birds pretty well. So we're able to match personality to personality pretty well.
So what are you okay, you mentioned if there are no red flags. What are we talking
Mm,
about? What are we because you have to do that. I mean, you have to make sure that I mean, you're responsible for these animals. You need to make
mhm.
sure that they're going someplace safe, right?
Do.
Um, what are you
So
looking
with
for?
our people, so most of the people that surrender to us, people always like I always get upset when people think that, all rescue birds are like these thrown away animals. That's usually not the case. 99.9% of the birds that come in here, barring animal control cases, let's set them aside over here. But
Mhm,
all of the regular people who are surrendering their birds to the rescue are either terminally ill, going into hospice, or have died. It's a very rare thing for us to get a bird where somebody just doesn't want the bird. That's it happens. It actually happened today. A woman had her son got the bird, played with him for a week, didn't want him, and then she's had him for six months. He's an 8-month-old bird. Like
mm,
it happens, just not very often.
yeah,
So but most of the time, these birds are incredibly well loved. So when people have grown up with these birds their entire lives, I always say, as long as I'm drawing breath on this planet, I will know where this bird is. So if you call me in 5 years, I will check in with the family and see how they're doing. That's the
mhm.
big one right there. I want the ability to do that. I want to trust that when I put a bird in a home, it's going to be where I put it in 5 years. That's the goal.
Um, excuse me. So Elizabeth, I was just noticing Elizabeth said she's got one bird that's sick with E. coli, D. strep, and other bacteria. We'll get there, Elizabeth. We'll talk about this. But so what if I come to you, or what if someone wants to adopt but has some disease history? They have okay, so Elizabeth comes to you and says, Shannon, I want to adopt a bird. She's got some disease going on here, nothing that's, jumping out at me right away. But what if somebody has disease history? What happens then?
So I actually have one right now that we're working on who great girl. I really like her. She found out recently when her bird passed away, and I think she did a necropsy and histo and found out that the bird had PBFD, beak and feather disease. So for me to put a bird in that home now, she's got to go through the sanitation process, and then she needs to prove that to me, because I'm not going to put another bird in harm's way. So what I have told her, what my team has told her, is that we're happy to consider her for adoption, but she needs to have her other bird tested. One, she needs to work with her veterinarian to environmental swab that home, to and do so in a systematic, reasonable way that will actually determine if you're in trouble or not. And if her vet is willing to sign off on that, then we will consider her for adoption.
Nice. Okay. So it's not a hopeless lost cause. It's just
No,
there's a little bit of work.
so
Um,
the way I like to tell people, it's never no, it's just here's what you got to do.
right. So, we talked a little bit about the disease transmission and when someone's got that, but you also mentioned education, like finding out what do they know, what don't they know. How do you handle so somebody comes to you, super pumped to have a bird, they really want to do this. How do you provide that education to them?
So, one of the questions that we ask on our application, and we really truly look for this answer is probably one of the most important on the entire application. What does a day in the life of you and your bird look like? What is
Mhm,
it like in your fantasy of having this bird? What do you expect to do? What do you expect it to look like? What is the bird doing? What are you doing? What's like, lay it out for me. And that usually gives me a pretty good baseline of who they are as an
mhm.
avian person. It tells us where
Right.
they're at, as far as, if it's, I want a bird that's going to talk to everybody and be cool with everybody and be a family bird, then we know we got some work to do, because that's a unicorn that doesn't typically happen. So we we can then, then we start in with the birds are not family birds, and then we talk about hormones, we talk about the science of the bond, the mate bond. We talk about how to have that, but also keep it as platonic as possible, and not, you know instigate the beast of the hormones, and then what to do if you
Don't
do instigate the beast of the hormones. And
I always tell people don't make promises you can't keep, you know, and so that educate so it's not hopeless if I, know nothing about birds and I want to come and learn from
those are
you,
my favorite. Those are my very favorite, because I know that they haven't filled their head with a whole bunch of crap out on the internet.
right? It's so true. Um, all right, so rescue isn't always easy, we know that. It's a ton of work, it's heartbreaking on different levels. I don't run a rescue, but I virtually live a rescue with Carrie Ellen sometimes. I experienced a situation when we were driving back from Texas to Florida, where we had to, that phone call that you get, my best friend died last night and she's got a bluebird and we need to get rid of it. Okay, so then when you start scrambling, but I know one of the reasons I wanted to have Shannon on, you guys, was because she's gone through a situation very recently, last week, that would put anyone to the test, and she handled it like a trooper. I love the honesty and the transparency, and that's why I asked Shannon to do this. So can you fill people in on what happened last week? Well,
Sure.
it started
So
February 14th, right? I mean,
it
okay.
did. It started on Valentine's Day. Animal control from a county on the other side of the state. We are who animal control calls for Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, sometimes Wisconsin, sometimes Pennsylvania. It just depends. But this one was on the other side of the state for Michigan, and they called and said, "There's a bunch of birds flying in a house. Can you come and you know, catch them?" And so Michelle and I are skip off on our way out over Detroit area with hope and and sweetness in our brains. And when we got there, it was hands down the worst hoarding situation I've ever seen in my life. Um, the piles were up past my hips, and I'm tall. I'm almost 6 foot. The poop and the dust was at least a half foot deep. It was unlike anything I've ever seen. So we get in there, and of course I didn't take any hazmat gear or anything, because I have a something in my truck, but my tonneau cover is off my truck right now. And so I had taken it out and realized when we got there that we didn't have our Tyvek suits or any of that stuff. So we go into this house, and I'm noticing that the birds are all there's lovebirds and there's Indian ringnecks at this point when we went in. And the birds didn't look right. They like and I couldn't put my finger on why they didn't look right, but they looked n- just not right. And I don't know how else to explain that, because I mean they were feathered, most of them. Some of them had eye injuries, some of them had like their sears were they had rhinoliths that were like creating problems from obvious respiratory distress, and some sort of respiratory infection in the past. And there were a holy ton of dead birds, and there was no heat. The heaters they had in there were all like plug in like space heaters. I don't know how the place didn't blow up. I mean, it was incredible, and there was a human being living in this. So we catch all the birds, and we're putting them in carriers, and like, it's dark, and we're trying to catch as many as we can because there's hundreds. And they're like, I don't know if you've ever tried to catch hundreds of lovebirds, but you ever see that meme with Homer Simpson where he just kind of like melts back into the like topiary thing?
Mhm.
Lovebirds do that. And when there's all of this stuff for them to hide into, they're like, so that first night we got 48 out plus the five Indian ringnecks. And then like it was getting dark and there's no lights. So the officer said, all right, let's go, and I'll come back over the weekend and check on it and see what's going on, and then I'll let you know if I need you to come back. So 48 the first night, and we lost five over the weekend, which I was taking personally because I'm like, really, I was like, God bless me. I was taking five real personally because I felt like nothing was doing was keeping them alive. And, Dr. McNally is our veterinarian, and I phoned her with my bird math on the way to that place. I'm like, hey, so I'm going into a seizure situation. I don't know what we're looking at. And so like I was sending her video and stuff while we were there. And then on Tuesday, the following Tuesday, the officer called and said the neighbor went in over the weekend who had a key and found a whole bunch more, but there's a whole bunch more dead. They must have been hiding in the walls. So when I got there, she had, I mean, at least 50 dead when I got there, probably quite a bit more than that, but at least 50. And so we were able to get another nine out alive that day. And from there, three more died. And it's my understanding they took some larger birds out before I even got there. Um, so that was the hoarding situation as a whole. Now, because I knew that these birds didn't look right. I honestly, I thought it was Citizen beacon feather disease, PBFD, which is an incredibly contagious, incredibly long shelf life of a virus. You can't just kill that. It doesn't just go away. Like if you leave PBFD sitting on a counter, it will be there 6 months later when you return. It's not a virus that just dies. You have to kill it. So I thought it was that. And even though I do have a quarantine here, I like to quarantine healthy birds in that quarantine here. That's where I bring my healthy, and it's an educated guess, right? So it's this bird has been in this house for 22 years and has never seen another bird in 22 years. That's effectively quarantine. So
Right.
I feel pretty confident about bringing the bird who has seen a vet every 6 months or every year for the last 22 years and putting them in my quarantine area
Mhm.
with vet records, right? These guys, I thought it was Citizen beacon feather disease. So I took them to my house where the original rescue was before I bought the facility because it also has its own airspace. It has its own heater. We bought it has its own furnace in there. It's got its own air conditioner. It's got its own TV. They could watch Glee, and birds love Glee. That's a
Is that a
happy
fact?
little hack there. They do love it. All the music. There's a lot more sexual innuendo in that show than I remember, but birds do love it. So they're able to do that there. We we took everybody to Dr. McNally, and we did exams on each and every one of them, and because this is for a court case, and I mean we do all of this with or without a court case. Usually, most of the families that are bringing their birds to me, I have all their vet records. I have everything, right? When we don't, especially for the documentation for a serious criminal case, as as such as or as what is going on here, we had to be able to identify each bird. We had to be able to keep them in. So we had six different containers of birds at this point. And then each container had between 8 and 11 birds in it, except for the Indian ringnecks, which had five. And that way we could use the identifying features of their feathers and such to be able to identify them because we disease tested everybody. So I actually had this is a side note. I actually had a conversation with somebody who messaged us today. Disease testing, I'm interested to see what the general public thinks disease testing is. Disease testing in my world means PBFD, psittacosis,
Mhm.
polyoma, which echoes if there's like reason to believe.
Mhm.
And if you're feeling really froggy, you can probably go for Newcastle's, right? Those are the five that are like super available
Mhm.
to us. So that's disease testing. And not all of them are always necessary, but psittacosis usually. Um,
Mhm.
in this case, I was really interested in the PBFD. So we sent all of them out, and then my objective, which was not amazingly accomplished, is to keep everybody in the container that they came in without escaping. I don't know if you've ever watched the flock dynamics of lovebirds, but holy crap. So the first night they kept getting out, and I'm like, what is happening? I was getting really mad because they are in containers that cannot, they're wire, they're small enough gauge. I'm like, how are they getting out? So I turned off the lights and I sat there and watched them by firelight. And those little boogers were going four deep, four of them, up, over, down, over, up, over, testing whether or not they could get out at each bar. And there were four of them doing it systematically until they got all the way around to the door and they realized that one could push the door open, the other could push the door open, and they could file out single file. I'm like,
I
I
know.
was getting big.
We tell everybody they're
So,
smart. We just, don't always prove it that way.
man, I we don't, some we get hordes, like we had the huge 800 budgie situation. We've had
Mhm.
400 cockatiels at a time. We've had another 400 cockatiels at a time. So we do get to see them, now and again. But I've never been in a position where I need the 11 to stay right here, and it's super important they don't go away. So it was interesting to watch them use their bird tools. So they were getting out. We figured it out and were able to keep them contained. And then all of that disease testing came back negative. And I was like, okay. And I even did a video for our rescue, and I was very excited. I was very excited on the video, like, yay, like, look at us, we got it done. But I just kept feeling like something wasn't right. Um, we had turned a corner. The birds weren't dying anymore. We weren't losing them. Um, but what kept running through my head is, in that house there's a blender in this kitchen that is horrific, and someday I will have the ability to publish this video. I have the videos, I've shown you the video. um,
Mhm.
Someday I'll have the ability to share that and use it for teaching, not until after the case is completely adjudicated. So in this house there's a blender, and on the blender it's covered in bird crap. And on top of the bird crap, there was runny blood that looked like somebody had cut their finger badly and it ran down. And I kept thinking, she's not using the blender, clearly, because there's bird crap all over the blender. It's not broken bird crap, it's just a stream of bird crap, which means this blood came from one of these birds. And then I had talked to the officer about it. I've become friends with all these people. So I text the officer. I'm like, hey, like, you remember seeing blood? She's like, oh yeah, there's blood everywhere. It's all over the windowsills. It's everywhere. Because she's been in there in the daytime a lot more than I have. And the blood, PBFD doesn't explain the blood. No, like, none of those diseases explain the blood.
Okay.
And birds who are laying eggs don't explain the blood. We saw a couple of the different birds had protrusions, but not a oh, what's the word I'm looking for?
Wasn't a
When
prolapse.
a cockroach,
So not
prolapse.
a
It was not prolapse. So it's not prolapse, but there are scabs inside of the vent pushing out. And I'm like, just none of it sat right with me. But there's like, what else to test for at this point?
Mhm.
So, as it so happens, we took some of those deceased birds because we needed to. I mean, I like to do necropsies and histo anyway. If
Mhm.
we like, I just like to learn from these birds, and in the end, between Dr. McNally and her amazing brain and my, fervent need to document everything and just our nerdiness together made us do this for this particular case. She sent out the birds for or she did necropsy. She sent out slides for histopathology, and it came back as the adenovirus.
After I talk to you, I'm going to ask you to explain to people what that is, because I
Yeah.
can tell you, after I talked to you and you said, it's hasn't been seen, it's super rare. I searched, and, not that my research any better than yours. It was just for my own benefit, and
Mhm.
I found nothing. My daughter-in-law does histo work, and I mentioned it to her, and she goes, "Oh yeah, we see that in humans." And I went,
Mhm.
"Okay, so now we're talking a zoonotic disease.
It is.
So tell us more." This is Nick just put up. Tell people what this is, please.
So this is page one, I believe. Yeah, this is page one of the histopathology. So what this is showing is that the bird has lesions. I think this one, I can't read it because it's not close enough for me, but I think this one says that it has lesions on the liver, lesions on the
Mhm,
heart, the testicles. We in necropsy on this one, the testicles were super underdeveloped, and Doc um sh- I'm super glad she sent this one in particular. So the adenovirus has not been seen in United States since 2005. Uh,
mhm,
it used to be prevalent. So I've talked to Dr. McDonald, who is our he does clinic here twice a year. We put on a low cost vet clinic. He sees a ton of birds every week. He travels. He's one of my favorite people, and a dear friend. Dr. Jack Kotwitz runs the exotics program at Michigan State University. He's a incredible zoologist and avian vet. He teaches wet labs in my facility. So I called Dr. Kotwitz, I called Dr. McDonald. Uh, you know, Dr. McNally is conferring with different doctors because I mean, we don't even know what this is at this point, right? And so and then I have a friend who's got some or her parents are on the board at Texas A&M. And so like we conferred with like some of the most brilliant avian minds in the world, and the general consensus of that was we do still see adenovirus in chicken, we see it in
mhm,
reptiles, we see it in humans. There's a whole bunch of different strains of adenovirus, but in citizen species it hasn't been seen in a very long time, and I haven't received a satisfactory understanding of how it was eradicated or why the decline in the virus or how we managed to get rid of it. But the description between the good doctors was that it was prevalent in the 80s and 90s, especially in lovebirds. It was also African species of birds were very likely to carry it, and that there were two ways that it presents. One is respiratory, which we saw some of the
mhm,
evidence of with the rhinoliths and some of the birds, meaning the sears. So for those people who don't know avians super well, you got the sears where what holds the nares, which are nostrils for birds, and if you
mhm,
have a bad sinus infection in a bird that goes untreated, it can malform the sinus cavity to the point where it actually like erodes the
mhm,
skin and the cartilage and all of that between the nostrils. So we were seeing some evidence of that. So that's one way, like respiratory, almost like a psittacosis type infection. The other way is with lesions on the liver, lesions on the heart, lesions, on all the uh, organs, bloody diarrhea, and sudden death. And we were
mhm,
able to find two different papers, one from Australia, one from Cornell, to look at, but each of them contained much less birds than what we were dealing with. And there was really no information on even treating it or anything like that. It's really just supportive care. There's no cure for it. And what we understood with the adenovirus is it's super contagious. It's
Mhm.
an enveloped virus. So what that means is you got a virus, like, so a virus is, you got a cell, right? And it's got DNA in the cell. An enveloped virus has a big box around said cell. So, like, if you want to kill the virus, you have to kill the box. Then you can work on the cell. So, this is something that takes like an F10 or a Virex, and it's got to sit wet on it for a period of time in order to actually decimate or kill the disease.
Yeah.
So, or kill the virus. So, we, I, had I listened to our disease testing, I mean, I really feel like I won the lottery here, because had I listened to our disease testing and allowed myself to get them out of my garage at my husband's urging, like, please get the, noisy, messy birds out of our garage and get them back to the facility where they belong, I would have infected my entire facility. And
Yeah.
I would have been, it would have been a tragedy, but I would have been like, it would have been like a terrible tragedy, but like there was no way for me to know that without having done that necropsy and histo.
Right. So Bree says, do the other species that get adeno spread it like birds, or are they treatable? Like, can you remove it?
You cannot
It's not.
remove it. So it's once they have it, they can clear it, but the next time they get stressed or upset, they can begin shedding the virus again. It reminds me of shingles. So, like, I had
Yeah.
chicken pox as a kid. I'm a carrier for the rest of my life. A perfect storm has to happen for me to get shingles. I could go my whole life and never get shingles,
Mhm.
which is just being a carrier. But if the perfect storm happens and I do get shingles, now every time I get stressed in the future or have an immune compromisation or the perfect storm happens again, I will continue to get shingles for the rest of my life, and while I have shingles, I will be actively shedding that virus.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like that.
So, all right. So, you did get, well, it was your knowledge, your knowing that things weren't right. Just, you know, um, how did so quarantine? I mean, you had the birds in the separated out so you could, not confuse them or mix them up, whatever. Let's talk quarantine, because I think this is a big issue for companion parrot owners, for people who have rescues and facilities. I run into it a
Mm.
lot. It was a good analogy, Amy. You're right. But
Yes.
I quarantine, I put them, at the other end of the room. I've worked with people that had a bird, the bird was fine, and then they find out, oh, that bird has whatever, you name it, disease. And but I put the bird at the other end of the room. It's not enough. And it makes me kind of go like this. And it's only because we don't share that knowledge enough, I don't think. So talk to us about quarantine, please.
So before I start talking about that, what I'd like to say, as a new person, when I first came into rescue, I very much was treated to the mean girl treatment in rescue, right? And I I didn't then understand the necessity of quarantine like I do now. And I felt like people were just trying to get me, you know what I mean? Like, people were just trying
Mhm.
to like, criticize me. And now I understand that that's not it. Um if you're going to do rescue, you have to be able to keep the animals that you're bringing into your fold safe. And then you have to be able to continue to keep them safe as you add more animals. And whether you mean to in rescue or not, it- there will always be more birds than there is space in rescue. So if you've got room, the world will fill it with birds. And in order for you to do that properly and safely, you have to have a space where you can stick new birds to get them medically cleared. And
Mhm.
what that means to you depends on your own standards, okay? So for me, what I kept doing as I progressed through the years in rescue is I kept taking all of the criticism and all of the mean girl crap out there, and I kept just trying to make myself get to a place where they just could never criticize me. That's how I got to the place I'm at, if I'm being real frank about it. So for that I'm grateful, because in the end it saved all of the birds that are here.
Yeah.
So quarantine for me means a space that cannot share air. So like if you have forced air in your home, then your bedroom down the hall isn't going to cut it. You're going to have to actually get them to a space that does not share air with any other birds. So, as
Mhm.
an example, in my facility, my front two rooms have all of the birds that are available for adoption and some of my personal birds in there. The back room has its own entrance. It has its own heating source. It has its own cooling source, and I can completely shut it off and not go in there, until after all of the other birds are handled,
Mhm.
and not have to go back to where the other birds are. That's quarantine for me. Um, at the rescue, I don't really have to, we're not doing Tyvek and all of that. We're just, like I said, if the birds are here, I am reasonably sure they're okay. Um, they will, like, within, usually a week or two, see the vet. If they have not come in, most of the time they're coming in with full vet records within the last three
Mhm.
months so
Okay.
most of the time, that's what people are, I try to make it as easy on myself as possible. If I know that they're coming, you can take them to the vet and get the stuff I need before they get here, so it just makes it easier.
But Shauna just asked isolation versus quarantine.
So that's isolation. Quarantine, like true quarantine was what I did with these lovebirds. I took them to my house away. Now, at my house, I have my hyacinth macaw, which is the love of my life. I have my golden conure. I have my personal, my heartbirds are at my house. And that was terrifying for me, because one wrong move and I'm killing Kobe. And that's, so for me, I was just extra, extra, extra careful. Like I said, we had Tyvek suits. For me to even go in that room, we suit up. We
Mhm.
had hair nets, we had booties, and then we had 90% alcohol as we're leaving the space, as we're taking off. Like, none of my clothes or anything are exposed, but even so, I'm dousing myself in 90% alcohol before I go anywhere. And then I go straight up, change my clothes, take a shower and all of that. For almost a month, my birds didn't get handled until almost 10 o'clock at night.
Well, and I think too, you mentioned birds will come in, they have vet records, usually. But for some people, I mean, when if somebody wants to rehome a bird and you end up, I'm going to take this bird home, I'm going to adopt this bird, I'm going to take this bird home with me. Um, it may not test positive for any, PDD is the one that comes to mind. It doesn't test
Yeah.
positive. Even if you can get, negative, 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 and then all of a sudden it's positive.
I
But
have
it's a
one of those
matter of
right now.
yeah, and taking those steps. There's nothing that can be done. You can't stop that progression. You can't say, "Oh no, I'm going to take better care of this bird and stop that." So it's really about you put that bird in quarantine. You do your due diligence. You test, and like you said, I think those 5 tests they should be the norm. They should be what people are testing for because we wouldn't be doing any of this, we wouldn't be listening to these kind of live streams, we wouldn't be networking if we didn't love the birds. So we want to keep them as safe as we possibly can.
Yeah.
um, and that kind of brings me around to the transparency, Shannon. That's what really
Okay.
made me want to reach out to you. So why the transparency?
Well, so last year we had kind of a silly thing happen. I'm people call me the bird bitch. And I wrote a naughty email to a guy that upset me. because we had a bad seizure, and then I went to a 40 cockatiel surrender to find out it was 437 on my birthday.
Mm.
Like, it was a really crappy week. And this guy writes me and he's like, "Yeah, I see that you got an application here. I just want to come buy a bird." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's not how any of this happens." Like, I was very nice to him when I emailed him back. And he wrote me this condescending, ridiculous email. And I lost it. And I told him, like, "Sure, let's do it your way. Like, don't worry about anything that's happening here. All of the processes or all the things that we have created to make all of this happen. Let me cater to you, bud. What can I do for?" Like, I was mad. And then I published it. And what happened was this viral, crazy thing that spread throughout the entire rescue community. Like, not just birds. We're talking dogs and cats and wildlife and ferrets and livestock, like all of it. And all of us rescues sort of came together, and I was ground zero for it. And the reason for the transparency, to answer your question, is because all of the other rescues read what I do here. And I
Mhm.
know, based on my own experience from the beginning, when I was in when I started rescue, the shame and the terrifying nature of making a misstep, I don't want that to be the experience for science. We all love these animals. We all want
Mhm.
to do better by these animals. Nobody gets into rescue thinking, "I'm going to really suck at this." So if you suck at this, it's because you just don't know better yet. And so, like, I
Mhm.
actually had this conversation earlier today. Somebody was criticizing another rescue, and they came to me in a DM, and I said, "Listen, do you think that it would be helpful for me to just go tear them down? Is that what you want? Or, like, do you think that this person's doing better now than what your experience?" "Well, yes, I think this person's doing better. I think they're aligning themselves with good rescues and trying to build themselves up." I'm like, "So let them, because we need their help." That's the
Right.
reason for the transparency right there.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. I mean, doing the Rockstar Rescue Tour, I work with all across the avian community, whether it's breeders, rescues, uh, facilities that have big collections. And I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I know that the bad doesn't always, it could be that lack of education. I can tell you right now that there are rescues that are experiencing beak and feather.
Yeah.
The transparency has to be there, because if it's not, I think I said to you, we were talking about with this situation that you've just had, whether it was a matter of, um, you know, I'm going to share this with everybody. I'm going to get it out there. And then there were detractors who gave you a hard time about the decision to euthanize those birds. And
Yeah.
what I said to Shannon was, well, then why don't you just take a tube of anthrax, get on the subway, and just pop it open at rush hour?
Yeah.
Because it's the
I mean,
same thing. To me, this transparency, we all have to do it. We have to share. We have to educate. And Carrie just said we learned something from every place we went to, every rescue that we went to. Um, and it's a matter of sharing that information, whatever part of the community you're in. Because, okay, so you just were lucky enough to see adenovirus. How many people have seen that? You can count the numbers on one hand, even based on the
yeah.
studies. And when you talk to veterinarians, they've heard of it. They've heard of it with bunnies. They've heard of it with reptiles, but not so much with the avian community. So now this information's out there, and I want to applaud you. I really want to thank you for sharing and being honest with this issue, this crisis that you've just been through. Um, so to go back, we had Elizabeth asked in the beginning. I don't know if Elizabeth is still listening. She's got a bird that's sick with E. coli, strep, and another bacteria. So okay, our birds are going to get sick on occasion, right?
Mhm.
It happens. How do you handle when you've got a sick bird in the rescue that maybe didn't come in sick, but is now sick?
It depends on what it is. So a bacterial infection is not nearly as problematic as like a, as a virus or something.
Right.
So we have hospital cages, we have, incubators, we have space that we can take them away from the others so that they're not right next to somebody else, but they're still in a warm, comfy, you know, environment. But not, like there's space. I mean, a bacterial infection isn't going to you know, jump a wall and go get somebody. A virus potentially could, uh, depending on the viruses. But yeah, so like a bacterial infection, we put them in the hospital area, and then they receive their meds, and they're on a schedule, and everything's charted. And we use a charting software that it's not a charting software, but I made it a charting software, and it's brilliant. So that when I have something up and we're charting, and I just tag Doc in it, and then she can go in and see video. She can like whatever I put in there for her to see. She can actually go look at it at 10 o'clock at night while she's watching American Idol. So, I it's yeah, that's how we handle it. We just work with the doc and work through it. And uh bacterial infections I'm not so crazy about, but like if we were talking psittacosis, then then we go into like red alert and a lockdown.
Right.
And you know
Right.
yeah.
Amy said education is key. No one has all the answers, and it's so true. And sharing
Amen.
experiences like this will help everyone. And like Carrie said, we learn something every single place we went. And Carrie and I have both been doing avians for a very long time. And so, not that either one of us are old. I didn't say that. She's going to come after me after this now. Um, but it is, and it's about learning. And like when I present places and people make comments in the audience, I learn every single time. And I think that's important. So transparency, we've got it out there. We're being honest about what's going on in our facility, in our homes. And taking it to social media can be dicey because you've got your detractors. You've got, the mean girl posse out there just waiting to jump on you because you've got something wrong. And then you've got the people that know everything that are not friends with Amy and don't think that education is key. Um, and they're going to give you this advice that they really don't have. So, what's your
So
advice to people?
it's really super important. Okay, so like I have been fervently trying to change that culture, because
Mhm,
when I came into it, it was just the mean girls or the know everything. And we have opened up a space. I see Zeb in here. Zeb and
mhm,
I love Zeb. I have never met Zeb in person, but all of the information that he puts out into the world is thoughtful, it's real, it's
mhm,
tested, it's true, it's tried. You know that because you can see it in the experience that he's sharing. He's not he's not saying you have to do this, you must do this and never do this and always do this. It's this is what has worked for me, and this is what I have found to be true. And
mhm.
uh I feel like Zeb and I have kind of our own little world out here in the avian world. And I hope I don't offend him by saying that. But like I hear it all the time. Like I people are always on my feeds going, oh, I always watch you and Zeb, like because I know that I'm gonna get great information, and it's not gonna ever be mean or judgy. I It's imperative, in my opinion, that we remove shame altogether from the avian world. It doesn't do anything. Like, I mean, like if you go, hey, like you suck and you're not good at this and your bird looks like crap and he's gonna die if you don't, like, is that helping? Like, that's never helping. There's
Yeah.
nothing about that that's going to make that person go, you know what, you're right, I should go do all of those things you said right now, because you're clearly a great person and I suck as a human being. Like, that's not helpful. So instead, if we can remove shame and just assume that everybody wants the best for their bird, and they certainly
Mhm.
love their bird more than I do, that if we can help them in a way that they can hear us and share information in a way that is non-judgmental and is open for like questions or interpret, like nobody's going to come take your birthday away or steal your puppy if you don't do this, but you might benefit from hearing this information. If we're able to do that, I think we make better bird parents out there. I think we make people who are more comfortable asking questions, digging around and learning things, and aren't surrendering their birds because they think they suck at it. And
Right.
that goes for rescues too.
We when we did the rescue tour, there were people that said, "Oh, you're going to this place? Oh, that place sucks. Or you're going to this place? That place is no good. They don't do that right. You shouldn't go there. Why are you going there? They don't deserve you to go there." Carrie Ellen and I talked about it. None of those birds chose to be where they were. Maybe their owners chose it or that's where they ended up. Um, but it's that sharing of information and like on the Friday night flock talks, we really try to just put the information out. And if people have questions, this is a safe place to do it. This is a safe place to ask those questions or to, and if I don't have the answer or my guest doesn't have the answer, we'll find it. We'll look
Yeah.
into it for you. Message afterwards. If you're afraid to have Nick put it up on the screen or have it on the comments, message us later. But we've gone for an hour here, Shannon, and
Yeah.
there's probably another hour we could do. Um, but I want to thank you, and I can't wait to meet you in person. I got to meet Zeb in person last year. We stopped at Zeb's house on last year's tour. So I can't wait. We are working on, yeah, we need one of those. Carrie and I need one of those. Can we just borrow that? Well, I mean, I think
Sure.
we could use.
Honestly, I mean,
Um,
if you want to borrow that, you can.
oh, Carrie, did you hear that? Um, but we're working on an interactive map so people can see um, where we're going to be on the road and they can stop, if they're somewhere near where we're going to be. So that is coming. Um, Kathleen says she's had birds for 65 years. Education and compassion are meant to be shared for the betterment. We all started out at square one. Amen, Kathleen. That is so
Right.
true. So
No matter
true.
where you're at.
Um,
It's true.
but yeah, I don't bite. I will if you become the mean girl, just FYI. But I wanna, lots of comments here. Amy, I hate rescues bad mouthing each other. It does nothing to help the birds. And if there's a legit issue with a rescue, then it will be worked out in good time. It's so true. And Amy, I gotta say, not even just the rescue community, it's the avian community. We fight amongst ourselves and we open the door for people to take away bird ownership. We all want these beautiful creatures in our lives. So, I want to leave on a positive note. Shannon, bravo for your transparency, your honesty, and your willingness to help people. I want to thank you. So, can't wait to meet you. And if anybody wants to get in touch, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Send us a message on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/birds and beaks, and that's the fastest way to get a hold of us.
Okay. And just a reminder, anybody that wants to use the code Leather Elves Toys from now until midnight on the 17th, if you put in BNB, it's 25% off. And then if you want to buy a box for one of our rescues, they will be doubled from now until midnight on the 17th. And you'll get a $25 gift card. The two promotions don't go together, but you can choose which one you'd like to do. So thanks again, Shannon, and I will see you in a few short months. I'm so excited.
I
Take
appreciate
care,
you.
everybody.
Thank you
Have a
so
great
much.
week.